Hi, welcome to Why We Are Christians. My name is Clayton Chamberlain, and joining me today is Katrina Pierce. Hi, welcome, Katrina.
Thank you.
We're going to look at her profile and kind of talk about her life story and how she became a Christian. Katrina, tell me about where were you born? Let's start with that.
I was born in Sacramento, California. When I was 8 years old, we moved, my family and I moved to South Lake Tahoe, and that's where I spent the majority of my childhood growing up.
Well, tell me about Sacramento. Do you have any memories of Sacramento?
Yeah, I do.
Good or bad?
Yeah, both. Yeah, I grew up with. I'm the oldest. I had a younger sister, 2 years younger, and a younger brother. He's 4 years younger. So it was the three of us. I was born into a Christian family. We frequently would go to church, and we were involved in Sunday school and plays in the church and choirs, and I have a lot of fond memories of having that time with my brother and my sister and my family. And
so you have early memories of going to the church even when you were okay.
Yes.
And Sunday school and all that.
Yes.
What did you think then of church? Did you think it was just something you did, or?
Yeah, for me it was a way of life. I didn't know, any different. I hadn't been able to develop a concept of life without, or even understand that some people didn't attend church or were involved or, would sing Sunday morning praises. I wasn't aware of that at that age. So for me, it was great. I really enjoyed the singing. I really enjoyed, being a part of, the group activities. And I was young. I was young, of course, but I remember developing lots of, friendships within the church.
So you started out in Sacramento, and then you moved where?
South Lake Tahoe. Yes.
Beautiful part of the country. Very
beautiful. Lots of snow.
And what kind of memories stand out from that? I mean, growing up, that must have been a nice area to grow up in.
It was. Yeah, it was. I think in my younger years, I did enjoy the diversity of, all of a sudden we did have snow, and we were exploring some different churches to attend. It was definitely a culture shock to move at that age. I think it was very difficult to move. Maybe more on me, because it was the biggest change in my life. And
would you say that was a normal childhood growing up? Everything is kind of idyllic, or how would you characterize it?
Yeah, it was normal. One thing that was a little different was I was homeschooled when I was young. I was homeschooled all the way up until 6th grade.
When was that? That was some time ago. That was before it was popular, so you're homeschooled.
Yeah. It was great.
Was your mom a rebel of some sort, or?
My mom was a little bit of a hippie, I think.
Okay.
She was also a teacher, so she wanted to, they explored, I think, some of the schools in Sacramento area and just didn't feel that they wanted to send their kids off to one of those public schools. She wanted to do the teaching there, and she was fully credentialed to do so. So she kept us home, and it was great. I didn't know any different, and we went on nature walks to learn about science, and we played and did experiments in the backyard to learn things, and sat at the kitchen table and did our grammar, and I didn't know any different, and I thought it was great. I think going to school would have maybe been hard.
So were you homeschooled all the way through the high school, or?
All the way through 6th grade.
6th grade.
Yeah. So, and then I had a big culture shock. That was a little life-changing. I didn't actually go to 6th grade at the very beginning of the school year. I kind of started a little after, because it was kind of a late thought. It was that I needed to go. It was just not working out for, when we moved up to Tahoe, my mom actually had to get another job, and my dad somehow sort of took over the schooling in the house, but he didn't quite have the charisma to the teaching that my mom did. So my sister, who's extremely scholastic, she was ready and determined. She wanted to go to school, and she went. She was gone for a year already, but then it was time that my brother and I go as well. And I was a little reluctant, but I was looking forward to spending some time outside of the house at that age. But it was definitely a little bit of a culture shock. I remember the biggest thing that that impacted me was the language that these kids spoke, and the profanity was something that I had never heard. I'd been very sheltered from, so it was eye-opening. Yeah.
I'm smiling because I homeschool.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's very similar because my wife is the credentialed teacher, and this year I'm the dad homeschooling,
Oh.
and I'm sure the kids feel the same way you did. It's like, oh, please just get me through this.
Yeah.
So I understand. I can relate to that.
Oh, good.
Listen, tell me a little bit about your family heritage. I mean, what was your parents' background?
Well, that's fairly vague. I don't remember having very close relationships with any of my grandparents, and I don't know that my parents had.
Were they alive?
Yes, my at one point, not now, but I met my mom's mother a couple times, and she's Polish, so we called her Baci. That's grandma in Polish. And I remember her being, there a few times, but not ever developing a close relationship with her. And then my dad's parents, they lived out of state, and we went and visited them a couple times, but they were both deaf, and so it was a different to communicate with them. It was a little bit more challenging. But my grandpa would write letters and always send a check for my birthday or for the holidays. So that I remember fondly. but that was pretty much the extent of our relationship.
Why do you think they were so distant?
I think there was
Was
some
there distance?
There was some definitely some emotional distance between my parents and their parents.
What about, so you were involved in the church from early on. Tell me your first memory of church, good or bad. I don't care.
I remember being in the pews. I remember singing hymnals, and I know that. I know that I went early on as well. But I remember singing, and I love singing, and I loved singing so much that I think I might have been made myself noticeable, and people would turn around and say, "Oh, you're really good." And I sang in the choir for a while. We used to do little plays, and I sing some solos. But I felt alive when I was singing, and I still love to sing. And for some reason, I love to sing hymnals. Christian hymnals are just. I feel like my voice was made to sing them better than any of the other karaoke songs you can come up with. I don't know why. I'm like, oh, I can sing, and I try to sing something else, and it's just never as good. But when I sing, I know there's just some songs, classic songs that I sing that I feel that my vocal cords were made to sing those songs. So it feels good when you know that you can do something well.
That's neat. Did your brother and sister, did they feel the same way about church that you did, or were they see it differently? As kids, as children.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, we always at home would, it was just part of our, our lifestyle. So I remember, the music that we listened to at home was, Don Francisco and Christine Wurtzen, and I remember, we went to a Don Francisco concert once, and I remember it was always just a part, and we all knew all the words and sang along, and my sister and brother and I would make up these dances that went along to the music, because we're all goofy and silly and have time to kill. And I remember listening to Focus on the Family had a Saturday morning show that they had on the radio, and I remember every Saturday morning we would get up, and they had a silly dance where you put a bowl on your head and walk around the house. It was the Saturday morning march, and I just have such fond memories of my parents still being asleep, and it's like 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. We all get up the three of us kids get up to listen to the radio and put bowls on our heads and walk around the house singing and stomping around like little.
Was there ever a time when you think your parents' faith was challenged?
Yes, very many times. Yeah.
Tell me about one of those.
Well, my parents are, they're now divorced. And that happened recently within the last 3 or 4 years. Uh-huh. Actually, it's probably been longer than that, but I like to think that it's only been that short, I think. It's maybe been about 6 years. But I think they stayed together for a very long time, even through very difficult years when they just weren't emotionally together anymore, because they made a vow and they made a promise, and they felt very strongly about that, and it was very, very painful for them to think about breaking that and separating. And I have the same idea of marriage, that it's sacred and it's something that's forever. And when you make a promise like that in front of God and in front of everyone, then you want to keep it. The intention is to keep it. So I know that that was very difficult for them to come to the idea to separate. But
So you think that they knew that it wasn't working out for a long time,
yeah,
and even though they knew it wasn't working out, they stuck with it, and probably just kind of bear with it until the kids were grown? Is that what you're saying? Or?
yeah, and even when we were grown, I think it came to a point where I was even saying, you guys need to get away from each other. You hear it from both sides, and they were both not doing well, and I think they're both doing better now. And
They fought a lot?
Not fought, but they were just both very unhappy, and kind of suppressing each other as far as really being alive and being able to grow. And
So it sounds like you'd characterize it as more lonely
yeah,
than anything else.
yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes you can be lonely with someone, more lonely with someone than you can without someone, on your own. And that's strange to think, but it does, and it happens all the time, and I see it all the time. And
But as a child, you didn't pick up on any of that, did you?
no, I didn't. I wasn't aware of it as a child. No, so whatever they had was, they're both here still, and I didn't, they might have had arguments, but I wasn't aware that it was to the degree that it was.
Okay.
No.
All right. So you moved to the great outdoors. You had lots of outdoor activity and lots of snow. Teenage years, how were those?
Oh, those were rough. Some parts were fun, but I wouldn't venture back into that time of life. It's definitely the time where you're discovering yourself and, trying to be cool and trying to not necessarily leave behind, including your family and a social life. It can be very challenging. And where, what I came from, I was so comfortable with that when I entered into a different world, as far as like sixth grade introduces you to
Now,
a whole
was this the
different
same
world.
time you were learning that public school had a different language than
Yeah.
you used at home? So this
Yeah.
was going on also?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
That's
all right.
that's sixth grade, so that's right at 12, 11,
Okay.
12, and that's when I remember I came in very strong, and my friends were very cautious about using profanity around me. They'd say, "Oh, don't say that. Katrina's right here." They were very, and I was very proud of myself for being such a good influence on them, thinking that they were, and there were a few of them that were very genuine about it, and some of them, didn't care so much to watch their mouths, but you get desensitized, being around something, and then you, kind of bring a little bit of that back home, and then it creates a little bit, difficulty there. So it was a struggle. It was a struggle, and I wanted to, have friends, and I wanted to be included in the outside circle of life, but it was a challenge to have that. It was very difficult to have that and have the home life be comfortable at the same time. So, and I think my dad was very cautious about me being involved with some of the outside, world and friends that I had. He was very cautious and didn't maybe let me explore as much as I wanted to, which made me want to explore even more.
As a teenager? Sure.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, and
catnip.
I know he was trying to protect me, but it created a lot of resentment and a lot of difficulty at home between the two of us, and we had extreme, blow up fights, and in times where, I thought I might have an ulcer, times where we went, weeks without speaking to each other because we were so angry, times where I was grounded for so long, or he'd, come in and break my CDs because he didn't like what I was listening to, and so I would rebel and find a way because I was very stubborn and he's very stubborn, so the two of us together was very difficult. Yeah.
Sounds like a normal teenager
Yes, I think
in
so.
America. Okay. So you get ready to go out of the house. What are you, 21, 22? When you become an adult, you go out into the world? How old were you?
Yeah, I went out into the world when I was about 16.
Okay.
My dad said, if you're going to live under this roof, you're going to live under these rules. And there came a time where I said...
Did you run away from home?
I said, okay, I'm not going to live under this roof anymore. And I packed my bag and I went down the street and I lived with my girlfriend and I lived with her. I actually didn't come back home until I was 18. So I was, it was probably later than that. I was out for a while, maybe 19.
Oh,
yeah.
my, you are stubborn.
Yeah, I was out deciding that I was going to make my own way, then find my own roof because I made my own rules.
So you ran away from home.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay?
They knew where I was,
but
but I wasn't.
How was Christmas and Thanksgiving, and did you go home for those things, or?
You know what? It's hard. I don't even really remember. I remember later my brother really telling me that he was really upset that I left him. He thought that I left him.
So your brother was upset with you?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I didn't know that until even recently. I didn't think about that. I was really trying to look after myself and to protect myself.
What's the age difference between the two of you?
He's 4 years younger than me.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so I imagine at that time it was difficult to watch me leave, and I never really considered that. I just was looking after me right then. So I feel bad for that.
Fair enough. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
but I don't remember holidays, and I don't know.
So it sounds like the discontent was between you and your father,
Yes.
mostly.
Yeah.
Okay. And did that cause problems between your father and your mother?
I'm sure it did. Yeah, I'm sure it did. And I never, I think if they had, he was the head of the household. They decided that, so he made the call.
What generation did they? I mean, you said they had a Polish heritage. How far removed were they from that? I'm just curious.
My mother, but I don't know.
You don't know,
Her, yeah, I think her grandma came
Okay.
over.
All right.
Yeah.
So somewhat more traditional in their view of the world, or?
Well, they both. I don't think it necessarily came from the heritage, because I don't think that was necessarily present in my parents' growing up heritage necessarily. But I know that they both decided they were going to raise, their children Christian, and they were going to abide by the fundamentals of, and the laws that God laid in front of them. And they decided early on that this is how they were going to, have the family, and the man is the head of the household, and they both decided and agreed on that. And so it became difficult when certain things were just, this is how it goes, and I don't know what happened behind the scenes. I only know the confrontation I had with my dad, and I think my mom kind of stayed out of the way. But I don't know that it would have been better if it was more people involved arguing, and I don't know what happened with them. I don't know.
So you came back home at 19, you said, right? 18, 19?
Yeah, I think it was 19.
What was that like?
I was ready to. So I'd actually gotten myself. I called and said I need to come home. I was just in a position that I was taking care of myself, but I was kind of involved in I was in a situation that wasn't extremely safe for me anymore, and I was very aware. And so I said I just need to. And they were more than happy. And I remember it was Thanksgiving, and they drove up. My brother and sister stayed with another family.
Drove to pick you up.
They drove to pick me up. I was out of state. And they drove to pick me up and my dog that I had. And we drove back. I remember it being Thanksgiving, and they were, I'm sure, very happy. And I didn't even dawn that it was maybe that day, but it just needed to happen soon. So. Yeah.
And nobody raised the past issues? It was just kind of went in the background?
Yeah, it was okay, you're back. And so I came home, and I got a job, and saved up, and
when did you move out?
And then I lived there for maybe about a year, and then I moved out. Yeah, maybe even not that long, but.
And did you stay near your parents?
Yeah, I lived close. Yeah, that was back in Lake Tahoe. So
you're still in Tahoe at the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was your first job? What were you doing?
Well, I got my first job when I was, I think, 16.
Okay.
It was right before I'd moved out. I was working in Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory, which is the best job to have as a teenager because you get to have all the leftover broken chocolate, and that was the best. And I made some very, very valuable friendships there. It felt very good. I really enjoyed working. I really, really did. But my first job, that was my official first job, but I actually was employed myself a lot younger when I was maybe 10 or 12, I made little business cards and rode around on my bike and dropped them off at houses nearby that looked like they had children that needed to be taken care of. And I offered my babysitting services, selfishly because I wanted to babysit and play with the younger generation because I really enjoyed that. And also a good plus to get paid. So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very innovative.
Yes.
Now, did any other family members have a business or anything, or that was just your idea?
Yeah, no. My dad had his own business. He
What did
was
he do?
Cozy Homes Gardening. So he did gardening in the summertime, and then he did snow removal in the wintertime. So it was called Cozy Homes was the name of their business.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you got a job for a year or two, and then you go out into the world. What did you do? What was your first career move?
Well, when I started working in a restaurant, and I started as a hostess, and then as a barista, and then I moved to waiting tables, and then managing, and I kind of moved all the way till I was managing more than one location, and then I became kind of an event coordinator for a location at one time, and I became a wedding coordinator. So I was.
This is all at the same location?
No. This
Okay.
is through multiple
Okay.
different,
All right.
locations. But I started in restaurant. I actually, when I needed to find a job, when I had moved out, and I had actually moved, like I said, out of state, and I decided I needed to find a job, and I kind of pounded the pavement and just looked for anything, and this place decided they were going to hire me, so I took it. I was ready to take anything, but that's kind of where I got into, and so I started working in the restaurant, and a great place, a great restaurant, great food, and I actually still remain friends with a lot of the group that runs it and used to work there, and so that was really nice. Yeah, good bonds were made.
You know, I'm going to ask this question. You have to forgive me. I'm a guy. But a wedding coordinator, I think I know what they do. Tell me. My wife's going to be angry at me. Tell me what they do exactly. They put all together the cake maker and all that stuff and arrange everything.
Yeah, I worked at a location that hosted the weddings.
Yeah.
So we had this was in Lake Tahoe when I did this, and it was a beachfront location. So people would come and tour, and we had a few different locations where people could book events, big and small. We had a little chapel, so they would book their location and how many people and what food and what drinks and yes, and then flowers and cake and decorations and. Renting of the linens and
But you're putting all these people together with each other, right? Or are you actually doing
some and some? Yeah, I mean, some of them I'm making, connections, and sometimes I would make some of the arrangements or assist them with making a lot of the arrangements. The main work that I did was the location and facilitating all the other vendors with the location and the food and beverage and setup and breakdown and staff
And that led to your next position, which is?
Right now, I'm a meeting coordinator.
So you like coordinating things?
It's just somehow I get to plan parties. Right now, I plan medical meetings for doctors to
That
earn
doesn't sound as
their
much fun as parties, but okay.
Yes, it's a completely different world, but it's fun to do something different. So I get to have all aspects of the coordination.
Now, we had talked earlier, and we've still got about 5 minutes left, but you had mentioned, I asked you about your first experience with God. Mm-hmm. Could you tell that story, just so we can lead it in with next time real quick? You were 8, I think you said?
Yeah, I don't remember my exact age, but I was by probably 7 or 8, and I remember I'd lost a ring or a bracelet. It was a piece of jewelry that was very special to me. It was probably some little $5 piece of jewelry that I just adored. And I remember I couldn't find it, and I was searching everywhere. I was panic-stricken. I was, asking everybody for help and looking under returning pillows. And my mom just mentioned, why don't you pray about it? And it hadn't dawned on me to do so. Okay, well, that can't hurt. So I did. And I remember opening my eyes and looking, we did that, so let's go look again. And I remember the first place I looked, there it was. It was sitting there, plain as day. There is no way I could have missed it before, because I'd looked in that spot, 100 times. And I will never forget that, because I remember looking, just thinking, how did you do that? Because it couldn't have been so without, some kind of intervention, or maybe my eyes were closed to it before and he opened my eyes to it. I don't know, but I remember feeling that that was some kind of a miracle, and that wasn't make a crippled man walk kind of a miracle, but for me at that time in my life, that was a miracle.
So it sounds like you had, I'll call somewhat typical childhood growing up. I mean, your parents had hard times. Mm-hmm. They were in the faith, and then teenage years come along, and there's a lot of conflict, right? And your mom and dad got a divorce during this time, or that just recently happened?
Yeah, that was after all of us were grown.
And then in your 20s, you look for your independence. But your faith, was it growing throughout this process?
My faith was in and out. Yeah, it was definitely. I lost it a lot during my teenage years. My dad was very strong in the faith and making sure that. That we all were following the Bible to the T and making sure that, kind of drilling it into us. Mm-hmm. Where, and I mean us as,
and you
as
were
a family.
rebelling against him at this time.
Yeah, but it was so hard that he would ask, well, what do you think about this? And I would answer, as best that I could, try to think about something. And I felt that critiqued almost. And I know he was trying to correct and teach me. That was the goal. But I felt attacked. I felt that I had to, shut down and protect myself. So it really was difficult. I wasn't able to grow with him. I grew, apart from him.
There was an animosity there between the two of you.
Yeah, and that was very hard because I understand now. So I understand more. At the time, I thought, why is he attacking me? But now I understand that all he wanted was, he was in desperation to make sure that we were all following the right path and becoming closer to God. But the way that it was, the way that we just, beat heads together, it didn't do that at all. It kind of turned me away. But he wanted your faith
to conform to his view. Is that a fair assessment? I mean,
it was. He was very strong in the way that he saw things and thought that they should be in line with, with Scripture. This is the way he understood it, and this is the way. And I didn't feel that I was able to maybe grow my own way or be myself, or to learn it a different way or to understand it a different way. So that was hard because I couldn't understand it the way he said, or I wasn't allowing myself to at that time. Maybe I just couldn't, but so I felt that I was wrong. I felt that I was wrong in all aspects of it, and that was very hard. So it really shut me down to to him and to, and to faith, because I felt like I couldn't access it.
Because you couldn't please him, and the faith, his doctrines that he wanted followed. Just you couldn't do it. So it actually injured your faith. Is that?
At that time, yeah, and I felt that I was doing it wrong, and I didn't. So I didn't know what I was doing. Obviously, So I did something else.
Boy, that's tough. Did you eventually resolve it?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
All right. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. Okay?
Okay.
Fair enough. Thank you for joining us at Why We're Christians. I'd like to thank Katrina Pierce.
Thank you.
And we'll pick it up in the next episode, and we'll get into her faith a little more. Thank you for joining us.